All right, here we are. And this is not a keepable hand. Send's a little better. And this is interesting. It would certainly be nice to have another 2-mana piece of removal, especially because with this thing in the ice, we kind of just want to play a bunch of cheap spells. But I think that is just way too important to draw land. With a control deck like this, you really want to hit your first 5 or 6 land drops. And now this is interesting. I guess we just play this. This is a hand where things could go quite nicely for us. Like we can play Thing in the Ice on turn 2. Looks like we may be in a mirror, though. And the only card our opponent would be able to tag is this Radiant Flames, which is kind of useless. The fact that looks like we're in a mirror is a little comical. I think here I'll just play the Thing in the Ice. It's extremely likely that this Thing in the Ice just dies, but I might as well make my opponent kill it. I do have land drops. I don't really want to play my Anticipate into a potential Negate, although actually if my opponent's willing to blow a Negate, I think I'd be fine letting it get countered. Oh man, brutal. That's a really good draw for my opponent. Hopefully I can return in kind. Unfortunately, we cannot. Negate is quite good. But it is just a 1-for-1. So that part's a little unfortunate. Could this be a Jace? Wow, we are so lucky that we got that Negate. Crazy. And this takes our Thing in the Ice down. So we actually have a bit of an interesting decision here. I think I'm just going to essentially fire off this Thing in the Ice. There's a pretty good chance that my opponent... Oh man, is this what I want to do? I think so. These removal spells that I have just do so little. So I'm playing this pretty aggressively, but I know that the deck doesn't have that many ways to deal with the 7/8, and it's a pretty fast clock. And these red removal spells that I have are not really going to do anything else in this matchup. I mean, those two spells combined don't even kill a Gearhulk. And with the Harness Lightning, I get to hold on to the 3 energy. I can just cast the Harness Lightning for 0. So this is definitely an unconventional line to take, but I know that my opponents think, I mean, if it is a true mirror, I know that my opponents, and apparently it's not, I know my opponents, you know, I kind of wish I had those removal spells, but that's the way it goes. So the appearance of this Cletus certainly changes things. And here I get to see what my opponent is potentially up to before I make my attack, which is kind of nice. Yeah, if my opponent has something like a Grasp in Darkness, then I probably don't want to make this attack. Man, my opponent certainly has the card draw. Painful Truths into Glimmer of Genius means that by most metrics that you would evaluate a control mirror by, my opponent is killing me. I mean, he just has so many more cards than I do. And he's seen so many more. Oh, wow. So here, this means that my opponent does have 2 energy. So he will be able to Harness Lightning and potentially kill the thing in the ice that I have at 2. Or he can also cast Radiant Flames for 3, and then Harness Lightning for 5. But I think what I need to take, though, is just this Gearhulk. It's just the most powerful thing in his hand. And I'm basically just going to hope that my opponent kind of runs out of gas, but that Negate is a problem. So when I attack this turn, he has to block. One thing that he could do is Harness Lightning my 0-4 thing in the ice and use the zombie to block. That would certainly work. To make it so he doesn't die and doesn't lose his Cletus. And then to be untapping with both Radiant Flames and Galvanic Blast, which don't actually kill my Awoken Horror. And he'll need another blocker, so yeah, I think this basically works out for me. Man, if I had another land and could attack with this Wandering Fumarole, that would be pretty nice. So that Transgress wasn't a bad top deck. Getting rid of my opponent's Gearhulk is definitely a big deal. That said, my opponent still has some good options. I mean, he's got 5 cards in his hand to my 0. So I'm ahead on the board, I'm ahead on life, but so now he can block and trade and get a zombie out of the deal. But his I mean, if he wants to use the Radiant Flames and the Galvanic Bombardment to kill this thing in the ice, it's fine. So if I block and then he Galvanic Bombardments to kill it, that would mean that he wouldn't have the Galvanic Bombardment for my Wandering Fumarole. I think I'd still rather not trade. Like the 2 damage here doesn't really matter. So it'd be a much tougher decision if I didn't know what my opponent had. But and unfortunately, I can only attack for 1 because I do know about that bombardment. I'm hoping my opponent didn't just draw another Gearhulk. And I am just going to play my land. Man, this has got to be exciting to watch. The old 1 power creature racing the 2 power creature. Sure. You've successfully killed my land. And I'm pretty worried that I'm so far behind on cards. My opponent doesn't have a great hand, but oh man. Yeah, I really don't want my Painful Choose to get tagged by a Negate. So I'm just going to hold off on the Painful Choose for now. Maybe try to overload his mana on 1 turn. Is this going to be the double Radiant Flames? Okay. It's a little interesting. The opponent only has 2 blue up right now. Oh man. I want to fire off this Painful Truth so bad. I guess if I don't do it now, I have to worry about him playing another Kalitas and then feeling like he can ignore it. So I guess I should just do it. I feel like a lot of counter spells in my deck. I'm going to hold on to it. I can play it if he plays like a threat. So the card draw spells are some of the best ones in the matchup. Oh, there we go. So I don't actually have anything good to cast except Anticipate. 3/6. If I have 1 more mana, I could play Painful Truce, and then when my opponent negates it, I could flash in a Torrential Gearhulk and flash back the Anticipate. So I guess maybe I just do nothing. It's a lethal attacker, which is pretty good. And I could potentially find a flashback the Anticipate and find something good. So I think I'm going to go for it. I mean, if he just has a bunch of red removal, then it's like insane. I have no pressure though. Nice. Wow, my opponent just is cold to it. That was insane. So it's a pretty interesting decision whether or not to go for that card in that specific situation. But now that we're here, we can take away. Love these cards that are a bit more niche. Jace is going to be good. Transgress is going to be good. Probably the third Negate is going to be good. I think there's going to be Planeswalkers that I have to worry about, so To the Slaughter seems good. And then probably bring in 2 of the Summary Dismissals. I don't think my opponent is on some sort of Emrakul deck. Ceremonious Rejection doesn't work against the Gearhulks, despite them being artifacts. They are colored. So I think probably the next best thing is just bring in this Confiscation Coup. I think a small number of harnessed lightnings are fine to help fuel the Confiscation Coups. I actually kind of want to get the other Confiscation Coup. 3 Thing in the Ice is probably more than I need, and Confiscation Coup is probably just better. I do like some number of Thing in the Ice. Alright, so I think that's how we're going to roll. Okay, this hand's fine. Probably going to get a island off this, I guess. Yeah, in that game we were on the draw and we had mulligans. Like, pretty pumped we won. And now this hand's great. If my opponent ever taps out on his turn, I can just counter whatever he plays and fire back with Painful Truths. Wow, this is great. I get to counter his Painful Truths and then cast my own. Fortunately, I only get to cast mine for 2, which is a little annoying. I could also just hold up Void Shatter, but I don't have another land drop. So that means I'll be in kind of a bad spot next turn. If my opponent just plays a Kalitas, I could be in bad shape. I mean, I could potentially confiscate it if it resolves, but either way, I am going to cast this for 2. I wish it was 3. But I just need the land drops so bad. And if my opponent doesn't... well, that's actually going to be really good. Oh, man. That's going to be hard to deal with. So I got to start firing stuff off. I need to hit all my land drops. I should probably just assume that I am going to hit all my land drops. I actually have no way to deal with this Fevered Visions. So I guess I'll just start with a Thing in the Ice. And let's see, do I have more black or more red spells? I only have 3 red spells, and I have 1, 2, 3 black spells, and then 2 that are... Oh no, I have 5 black spells. Okay, I'll get a swamp. Like, really doesn't make much of a difference, but it's worth just taking a quick look. Kind of surprised my opponent just didn't attack with Wandering Fumarole. Seems like it would have been pretty good there. And at this point, I'm basically hoping that my opponent plays like a Cletus so that I can steal it. Oh, wow, I really want the land. This game's going to be really hard to win. So if I take the land, then I'm just holding up counter magic, which isn't very good. But I think it's just too important. One thing that's particularly annoying about this is I have no good way to like get rid of these card draw cards. Yeah, I just want to hit my land drops. So I think that's a good target for Negate. I have to imagine my opponent has infinite counter spells. But and what's funny about this is I kind of like want the Transgress to resolve, just so that I have less cards in my hand. None of the cards in my hand really do anything. I mean, it's probably good for my opponent to know about this Confiscate. And if he takes the Unlicensed Disintegration, I actually have no answer for this Wandering Fumarole, which could be problematic, but that is indeed what my opponent takes. Oh, thank God. Got one off the top. And I'm hoping my opponent fights over this so that I can cast a counterspell. Yes. Things to target with my things. Drawing cards does not seem very good. A Transgress, though, does. So I will opt for that. And I'm actually going to be able to... Oh my god. That's going to be tough to deal with. Has 4 or more cards. Man, I'm so close to getting under the mark. Let's see, so there's... I actually just have no way to deal with these Gearhulks. One, two, three, four, five, six. So right now he can't cast Gearhulk with Negate backup unless he draws a land. So I think I'm going to take the Jace. I think that's more threatening than the other Fevered Visions, although I could be wrong. Yeah, I think I'm more afraid of the Jace. Another Fevered Visions is obviously quite scary as well. But at least that means we both are drawing cards. And this will get met with a Negate. Can cast this for 1. And I will only be taking 2 damage this turn. Just by drawing infinite cards. Man, I would love it if my opponent tried to flash in a Gearhulk. And I mean, I wouldn't mind attacking with the Wandering Fumarole, but so I only have 5 mana, so I can't cast Void Shatter and To the Slaughter. So I'm pretty sure what I want to do is just cast, or I could also actually just, I could also let this resolve and counter whatever it casts, and then confiscate the Torrential Gearhulk. I think that's what I'm going to do. There's a good chance my opponent has another Negate, but, you know, it doesn't matter. This game's basically lost as soon as if my opponent just plays an early Fevered Visions like he did, it's so hard for me to win. Although if that Fevered Visions comes later in the game, it, you know, isn't going to do a whole lot. And so if I cast Void Shatter and Confiscate this turn, that brings me down to 2 cards. I'll draw 1 for my turn, putting me to 3 cards. So in order for me to survive another turn, I'm going to have to at least cast 1 card on my turn. So, I mean, I could even cast both of these, potentially. Actually, wait, no, because I have to cast the Confiscation on my turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I could cast Confiscation and Jace. This is fine, but it'd be much faster clock if it... Oh, he's got an artifact. Wow, yeah, the Unlicensed Disintegration finishes me off. So after seeing those thingamabobbers, I think that I want the extra thing in the ice just to have a proactive play. And I want the Essence Extraction just so I can kind of gain a little bit of life. The Confiscation Coups don't look like they're going to do a whole lot, but I can get extra energy from Glimmer of Genius and still this 1 Harnessed Lightning to make it so that they can take a Gearhulk. So I think I'm still going to keep them even though they are kind of expensive. And yeah. So the fact that this hand is light on lands is a big problem, but if we can hit 1 land, we'll be able to cast Painful Truths. That's a pretty big deal. And we do have a Transgress the Mind against our opponent's Fevered Vision, so I'm going to keep this even though I'm very, very worried about my number of land drops. If I can rip some lands, I actually just have like the perfect curve. 2 mana counter, or 2 mana discard, 3 mana card draw, 4 mana counterspell, 5 mana steal something, 6 mana flash something back. So got some good stuff if I can hit my land drops. Oh man, I didn't even realize my clock. Jeez. Probably should have conceded that game a long time ago. Forgot about that. Gonna have to play a little faster. Yeah, sometimes I forget that when I'm even going through the alright, so what I want to do here, I think I want to, I mean, there are negates to worry about, but I think I need to go for the Fevered Visions if he has it. Yeah. Void, Pain, Storm. And it's really nice that we got that. And I'm just going to fire off my stuff. Get that negate out of his hand. Could also just hold, you know, wait for my opponent to cast something, Void Shatter it, and then follow up or whatever, but kind of want to just fire stuff off because my clock is so low. And I could have done this on my turn to look for the land drop, but then I wouldn't have been able to I actually just want the more blue mana. Even though this is going to come into play tapped, I have 3 mana for the Void Shatter. So here it seems like my opponent's probably thinking about a Glimmer of Genius. And my opponent has a bunch of removal spells, so I don't really want to play my Thing in the Ice into a removal at this particular moment. Now I can. I do kind of want to just get stuff out of my hand. I don't want to try to protect this. I want my counter spells to target things that generate card advantage. I think this is going to get met by my opponent's Void Shatter. My opponent, the only card I know he has is a 2 the Slaughter. And it almost wouldn't have been a bad idea to just get a pot shot with Wandering Fumarole there. And so that I can confiscate. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. There's a good chance this gets met by a counterspell, but whatever, I'll do it again next turn. Then when my opponent's out of counterspells, I can start firing off the Torrential Gearhulks and other card draw. So I'm actually feeling pretty good about this if it wasn't for the time constraint. Another land here to have Negate up would be great. Oh, Gearhulk, no. Why you gotta do this? Well, now I'm probably dead. It's like too much of a swing. I think I'm just going to try to flash in the Torrential Gearhulk. I know my opponent has 2 the Slaughter, so that's not actually going to work. I cannot take another hit, though. So I think I do have to fire off the Transgress. Oh, I only have 1 black mana, so I can't even fire off Transgress and 2 the Slaughter. So that means during my opponent's upkeep, I need to fire off the 2 the Slaughter. I can't do it inside of combat because my opponent can like draw Wandering Fumarole and play it. So it's going to be cutting it pretty close. Would have been nice to play this game without time constraints, but that is the nature of control mirrors. And unfortunately, that's the nature of me doing videos is, I end up talking a lot. Oh, this is another. Okay. At least it's not another Gearhulk. Actually, probably would have been a good chance for me to the slaughter there before my opponent draws more access to counter spells. The nice thing, the reason I set the stop on my opponent's upkeep is because my opponent had all of his mana open. So, but in my haste to click through things, I allowed this Glimmer of Genius to resolve. The nice thing about casting it now is, or at that point, is it would mean that another Torrential Gearhulk wouldn't have been able to counter this because he only had 5 mana instead of 6. So here it's like any counter spell. Okay, well, do you have another counter spell? So if he has Torrential Gearhulk, I could have played around this. So kind of messed up. Yep, looks like we're dead. Yeah, I should have done in response to the Glimmer, but oh well. At some point, I'll become like LSV and just be able to play perfectly and narrate everything at a fast pace, but I'm not quite LSV quality yet. But anyway, that's going to be this game. I have nothing that can deal with everything. My opponent gets to attack me down to 1 this turn. So I can cast my Torrential Gearhulk. But I don't even have a removal spell in my graveyard. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go to the next one. Pretty sweet game, though.